Hello and welcome to the In the Money Media YouTube channel. It is the return of the ITM Horseplayers Tour, horseplayers.com, the place to go and play. You start for $20 and you got multiple ways to turn that 20 into a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. We'll talk about the specifics of that maybe a little bit later in the show. Also, at the end of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about the Haskell win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Some interesting competitors in there for sure. And here to talk about it all with me, a returning guest. He gave you some really nice thoughts on the Saratoga card last week, and he'll do the same on this Del Mar opening day card. We can't promise another whatever it was $40 winner, but we're going to try. Here he is, TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are you?
Pete, $55 to be exact. And I don't know, like you say, don't hold me to that. I don't know that we can do that back-to-back weeks, but we'll find out. And the good news is we shift our attention to the West Coast with Del Mar opening day on Friday. It's a good card put together. You've got a nice stake in there in the Oceanside, and they made that tweak. Now it's basically an open stake as opposed to the restricted stake that it's been historically. So good field put together there. Nice pick five to wrap things up, and hopefully some folks can punch their ticket on to the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge before we know it.
I've been asking people for feedback, and everybody was giving me they love the all Saratoga. Now, of course, I've spun them and done all Del Mar, but it just seemed, I don't think I'll do a lot of all Del Mar, but for opening day with this card, I just thought it was the appropriate move. But, follow along, horseplayers.com. We have those games up there every week, and I know a lot of people got involved last week. I'm hoping this could be our record for the year with all the excitement of Del Mar opening day and this card we have on tap, which begins with the sixth race on Friday. 7:30 Eastern will be the time for this optional claimer with a non-winners of two allowance condition also attached to it. We're going a mile and a 16th on the Del Mar Green. Matt, how do you want to light this candle?
Well, I thought this was a tough race just simply because of the pace scenario. I think there's a real chance that Charlie's to blame and or the 10 Tempest Veloc could be loose out there kind of by themselves, and maybe they don't come back to the field. I'm hoping that's not the case because the horse that I like is going to come from a little bit farther off of it, and I think you need to be a little bit kind if you want to go this route along with me. I'm going to go to Maz. That's the 8 horse. We don't have a morning line as of the taping of this, so up for interpretation. And in many ways, I think that's actually a positive for you from a gambling standpoint. Makes you just kind of, look at that, as my background starts going crazy.
We were talking about this off air, and now it's come to fruition. But
all
it's
hell's
okay.
breaking loose.
We'll power through it. Tell us more about this Maz.
Pun intended. If you look at Maz, I think there are some positives to pull from this runner. The run in the La Jolla last year, I thought was actually pretty good. There wasn't a ton of pace signed on that day. Came with a decent run. The mile and 3/8 try at Del Mar, I'm willing to just excuse that, draw a line through it. And then the Hollywood Derby is just that, the Hollywood Derby, and it preceded a long layoff. So I've got a few excuse lines in there. The Twilight Derby 2 starts back at Santa Anita. When you consider there was no pace and he ran behind Test Score, who we know came back to win the Pegasus in his 4-year-old debut, I think there's a lot to like about him. I'm admitting that I don't know that the pace is going to work ideally for him, but my hope is that he's in that sort of high single-digit odds range. When you take a look and see the prices he's been throughout his career, and there are other names in here, if he's in that 7-8 to 1 range, I'm willing to give him a shot in here off the layoff.
I think you'll get that. The horse that I like is another one that's going to come from a little bit off the pace. And this is just a class play. Could get hammered at the windows. And I think your guess on Maz, who's a horse I've always liked, is probably right. That 6, that 8, maybe that 10 range. But the 4, Detain, might just be better than this field. Look at the form in races like the French Guineas and French Derby. And then I've been doing a lot of work trying to convert these overseas races onto the buyer scale. This horse in the Joe last year at Newmarket, to my mind, ran 100 or 101 on the buyer scale. I think there's a chance this horse just buries them. And, for contest purposes, it's one of those things, depends on your personality, if you're willing to take a shorter number and go on with life. In this case, I think I would. I like your case on Maz. That's a horse I've always liked. I'm going to go with number 4, Detain. And I do agree with you. If I'm playing in horizontals, if I could have a penny, I don't know which one's going to get the right front end trip, if that's going to be Tempest Fallout or that's going to be 7 Charlie's to Blame, but I'm with you that one of those two will be the best of speed. And this is a race without tons of abundant speed where I would not mind at all trying to keep the speed on side. So I wrote it down with the 4 as a lone A and the 7 and the 10. Certainly going to take extra consideration to your 8 runner Maz, though. Again, just as a runner, I've always liked that you make a cogent case for in race number 6. Let's go to race number 7. Matt, we've got these $25,000 claimers going 1 mile on the dirt. This is a tricky race to sort of get that brain around, I thought, with so many horses switching barns, and there's a lot going on here. But there was a horse that has a few of the angles that I gravitate towards, and that's the number 2 Circuit Breaker. I always pay a little bit of attention, extra attention, I should say, to Hess droppers. And this is a 3-year-old with other angles too, getting back to what I think is probably the preferred surface and now being second time against winners. I thought the 2 Circuit Breaker could maybe trip out in here, but lots of stories to tell. Where did you land?
I'm with you. I think this is a really tough race when you consider it's not an enormous field, but you can make an argument for at least half the group, I think. I ended up going to the 5 redial in here off the claim for the Ian Kruljack barn. It's just hard for me to ignore the fact that the 4 dirt routes are all very clearly the best races of this horse's career. Broke the maiden 3 starts back at Santa Anita off the layoff, and then came back with a couple of really nice performances at this level. I think it's something else to consider. It's not the end of the world in this race, but really read the condition and see what the beaten claiming condition is. This race is effectively a non-2 lifetime, but you're going to get some other spots where there's time restricted conditions and there's non-winners of X and certain races don't count. Really do your due diligence and see what that beaten condition is, because you hear us frequently refer to the beaten claiming level. That can mean a lot of different things. In this case, it's not. It's fairly straightforward non-2s. The one I didn't know what really to do with, and on top of that, from a gambling standpoint, price-wise, was just Pacer. Because Pacer's actually crossed the wire first on 2 occasions and was taken down in that most recent start. I think you could spin the case that he's the likeliest winner, but I like where you went with the deuce, and I went to the 5 redial, who I don't think is going to be any kind of a great price. But if you can get 5-2, 3-1, I think that's reasonable.
I was going to try to keep Pacer on side as more of a B. This is one, usually I agree, 80% of the time with the Timeform US pace projector, but I didn't really in this race. Timeform has the 6 Amador loose, but I got to figure FOMO Joe from the rail is going to be sent hard. And I think it will be a fair pace that could just set it up for the type of runners that we've been talking about in this spot. And redial, your selection might get the best trip of all. Just what are you envisioning in the slipstream behind the speed or further up than that, or do I have it wrong and you think he'll be from farther back today?
No, I would hope you're no more than about 2 off of it, especially if this pace. I'm with you. I don't know that anybody's going to be loose out there, but at the same time, I'd be stunned if they were setting a track record for the opening half mile. I think it's going to be fairly reasonable, and I would think that redial is within a handful of lengths of the pace setters, and hopefully you make your move inside that half mile pole and try to break this thing open. And I think I also need to throw the caveat out there. This is not a horse that I necessarily love as far as betting cash is concerned, right? I mean,
Right.
he's fine, but from a contest standpoint, you don't have the abstention option. You have to make a play, unless you could, I guess, but then you'd just be shooting yourself in the foot. In that case, I'd go to redial. It's a race I probably won't have a ton of money in unless I'm playing the multis if it is a pick 5. But even then, I'd be a little bit reluctant just because I don't have a strong opinion. And what you said at the top, I think there's a real argument to be made for Pacer that we talked about. Curly's agenda wouldn't stun me at all. I usually hate 3-horse blankets, but when you're 19 clear of the rest of the field, there's probably something to be said about that. There are some other wild cards in here as well. So a tough race here in this spot.
We'll get to the hinge in a second, but I do want to talk about the terms quickly of the ITM Horseplayers Tour. It's a $20 feeder on horseplayers.com. It operates as a regular horseplayers.com feeder, meaning the top 10% will go on to the direct qualifier on Saturday on the same site. You win that, you finish in the top numbers there, you win a BCBCC. Also, though, any week you play in our ITM Horseplayers Tour, if you finish in the top 4 in this feeder, you advance to our playoffs. That'll be a separate contest at the end of the season, right before the Breeders' Cup, and another $10,000 BCBCC will be awarded there at no cost to players. Oh, and I forgot to mention the best part. The house cut on these games, it goes to the Breeders' Cup charities who do amazing work across the board. On other shows, we'll have to go a little bit more into that. But just wanted to let folks know how it worked. We love to see your names on the leaderboard there over at horseplayers.com. Let's move on to the featured race of the day. This very interesting Oceanside. And gosh, there's just so much to contend with in here, especially with these dirt runners coming to the party. And they're both going to take a lot of money. But Matt, I'm going to throw the ball right back in your court to get your thought on who wins this featured race on opening day.
I don't think he's going to be the price of Sippin' Pretty last week, but there is a horse in here that should be a number that I like a lot. That's the 7 'Tis All That going out for the Richie Baltus barn. Trying to go 2 turns for the first time, I think is never, it should never be assumed, right? I mean, even if you're bred to do it, I don't think you should just take for granted that they're going to stretch out. I think he will. The pedigree is there. Half Sibling finished second in the Wilshire earlier this year, going a mile distance. And then the second dam was a grade 1 winner in the Rodeo Drive. So the pedigree is seemingly there for 2 turns. But the thing I like the most about this horse is just the progression. Now, he's a bit of a horror show out of the starting gate. He's going to spot this field a few lengths early on. The good news is, at least in my opinion, when I handicapped this race, I think this could be a barbecue. You've got a handful of horses that look like tearaway front runners. Would not surprise me if tip to tail this field was about 15 lengths first to last. And I think 'Tis All That has the ability to not necessarily be part of the pace, but be in the top of the second flight and hopefully get the run on the deep closers in here. If I don't think the distance would be a problem, I like a lot about this horse. I thought if you watch the replay from that most recent start at Santa Anita, kind of a disaster trip. Not only the slow start, but then got the shuffle around the far turn, had to wait, had a little bit of a trouble at the top of the lane, and kicked on really well at the end. You've only had 1 run back since then. That was the 8th place finisher who came out of that race and won. Granted, it was on dirt at Los Al, but won with a mid-80 buyer. I don't know what price he's going to be. My hope is that he's at least 10. I like 'Tis All That quite a bit in here.
I think you can make that case because we do, again, have a runner like Mr. AP coming off of, talk about form, beating a length in a grade 1 in the Breeders' Cup. And then you've got a runner like Secured Freedom who's got to catch all kinds of money. I think all of these other horses are going to benefit from that. I like a horse that also will benefit if they go a little bit fast. I really like Jordy Bear. Now, I know the 11 post isn't great, but I'm just really hoping that between those dirt runners and the post that we get a little bit of a better than should be price. Talked about this one in our Little Red Feather stable tour we did with Gary Fenton. Speaking of contest opportunities, on Saturday, there's that LRF Cares Charity Challenge. Great way to punch your ticket to the National Horseplayers Championship, also over on horseplayers.com if you want to get that one. But Gary spoke glowingly of this one. Connections projected this horse to love the conditions of USA racing. And that assumption looks dead on based on that career best run from a figure standpoint that I have him running last out. Just looks like one who's bound to improve. That 6 furlong last time feels like it was a deliberate stretch out for a spot like this. I see a lot of intent. Little Red Feather have won this race twice before. This horse, I think, is laid out to have a terrific run in this spot. And I think he's got the right amount of tactical speed to maybe just be able to navigate this post, but hopefully sit in behind some hitting up front. I think that will help this runner, who also I think is going to have the finish to be heard from late. It's the 7 and the 11 for us against the favorites. Let me ask you this, though. If you're playing, that's our contest thoughts. If you're playing horizontals here, what do you do with these runners making their first starts on turf? Are there either of them that you would want to include at least as backups, or are you just willing to oppose?
No, I think in a race like this, with it being so competitive, it'd be one thing if I had reservations about the quality of the grass runners themselves. I think this is a really deep group. And to your point, we often see this. And I think I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I think early season, a lot of these dirt horses that are actually turf runners, but they're running on the main track, when they make that transition over, they're probably just simply more talented than the horses that had been running on the turf at the time. But in this scenario, this is a good group of grass horses. It's not like you should just assume that they're going to come over here and be lengths better. At least that's my read on this thing. So with such a deep group, I want to go with the horses that I know this is their bread and butter, as opposed to the ones that, yeah, maybe they've got form lines and they've got names that we're all familiar from the 2-year-old campaigns or Triple Crown runs. But the jury's out. Is this actually what they want to do, or the connection's trying to find out if this is what they want to do? I'd be fading the dirt horses at a shorter number in here and taking a shot with Look, you and I talked about, I think, a couple of live shots in here, but there are so many other ways that you can go in here. I just, combination of things. I wouldn't sell yourself too short on a price. Don't just accept 3-1 in a race like this. Really go ahead and kind of get creative. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But these are the races to me that yield prices. And two, don't be afraid to take a stand. Don't be afraid to go out there. And let's say you are playing. Keep in mind, this is an all-turf pick 3 that Del Mar has put together. Take a stand in a race like this. If you're like me and you think it's wide open, plant your flag into one of them and say, if I'm right, hopefully we set ourselves up for success in the payoff. If not, we come back and fight another day.
The next opportunity to fire a shot will be race number 9, where we've got a Calbred allowance going 6.5 on the dirt. This is one where I agree with the Timeform US pace projector. I think it could be a fast pace in here. And the horse that I think will benefit the most, if that does in fact turn out to be the way that it is number 1, Rodrigo Knows. I was going to go with that runner as my top pick, but there is another horse that I could see maybe things, even despite what I just said about there being a lot of pace, could see tripping out perfectly. That's the 8, It's a Cinch. That would be my backup. If I were playing 2 contest entries, if I were playing 3, I'd do 2 on Rodrigo Knows and 1 on It's a Cinch. Went too fast last time, but I'm not 100% sure that this is a full need the lead type. I think this is a little bit of an easier field than what he's faced in the last 2. And given the draw, I could just see it working out. Sometimes when you're drawn outside the other speed, if they just go, you can settle a little bit off while still showing speed. Could just work out for 8, It's a Cinch in here. I definitely want on my horizontals, but the one runner, Rodrigo Knows, looks to me to be the best closer. I'll try to get one of these in for the contest and in horizontals. Are you with me, or do you want to bring some other numbers to the party in this 9th race at Del Mar on Friday?
If you want my analysis of the horse that I like, the 8, It's a Cinch, just rewind and listen back to everything that Pete just said. The only other thing I'll say is I agree with you. There's a real chance that this thing heats up a little bit. My problem was the 4 horses that I looked at and kind of circled in on. They're probably the 4 that are going to be out there wheeling and dealing on the front end. So this could be a really destructive race for me. Either the pace holds up and one of the 4 that I like, those being the 3, the 4, the 6, and the 8, the best of the speeds ends up prevailing and holds on, or this thing falls apart and sets up for your 1 horse coming from off of it, or someone else for that matter. But yeah, of the 4 horses that I was interested in, primarily because of that draw toward the outside. And on top of that, this is a horse that's run really well at this Calbred N1X condition, which you can't, some of these other horses, even one of the few that I've mentioned, they've kind of proven that this level can be a little bit too tough for them. And it's fascinating to see when you go through past performances, horses that 1 rung below look like world beaters, and they take that 1 rung up and they just can't hack it for whatever reason. I think you've always got to be cognizant of that when you get into these state-bred sort of N1X ranks.
We close out the Del Mar portion of the show with our analysis of the nightcap, race number 10, where we've got 3 and up fillies and mares going a mile on the turf. When it comes to our In the Money Tour contest over on Horseplayers.com and all the late picks at Del Mar on opening day, how are we going to get paid?
I initially went through this race and thought it was kind of challenging. I think there's a lot of speed in this race as well. So I looked at some of the closers, and the more and more I looked at it, I thought, am I overthinking things? I'm going to go to the 9 Ulysses Rose. A horse that as a maiden has been running in stakes company each of the last 2 at distances that when you look at the pedigree, you would think are going to kind of be right in her wheelhouse. But she's already stakes placed now. She got her black type. Now you drop her back in to the maiden ranks. And initially I was concerned, Pete, that she'd just completely get outrun early on, kind of like she did in her stateside debut. But if you go back and you watch that replay from April the 5th at Santa Anita, yeah, she got outrun a little bit, but then she didn't have the cleanest trip after that. I think she, with a little bit of pace and a little bit of racing luck, I think of the closers, I want to give her the benefit of the doubt with a little bit of class relief in here. She's probably among the favorites, would be my guess. But I'll go to the 9 Ulysses Rose.
This is another one where you could basically just rewind, and that's the notes that I have in front of me. I am a little bit concerned based on the dense distances she's been running that this could be sharp. But if all I looked at were the pace lines and wasn't too worried about the distances of those races, I'd say this is a horse that wants to be going a little bit shorter than what she's been facing. And then there's also the fact that the thing about the relationship between distances and stamina, if it's a truly run race, I think that mile could just bring her stamina into play. And this is one where I, like you, think it really could heat up. There's plenty of horses that want to go forward in here. I think Ulysses Rose could run her best yet race, and I think if she does that, she wins. Hopefully, we can get our common winners here home on this opening day at Del Mar and hit with some of the prices early. I think it's an approachable late pick 5 sequence, and one, Matt, that I think with those big, if we're willing to stand against those dirt runners in the Oceanside, I think it's worth putting in some tickets here beyond just playing in the contest over on horseplayers.com. You think you'll be attacking this?
Yeah, very much so, because we kind of laid it out. You like some prices in here, and I think I've increasingly got to the point of, for a combination of reasons, just not just equity, but bankroll management. The idea that you like these prices, don't be afraid to single them, right, and move on. And if it works, great, you're setting yourself up for a monster score. If it doesn't, no big deal. You haven't put a ton of money into something that maybe now, with the loss of the horse that you liked, isn't going to return what you would hope for. So yeah, this is a sequence that won't be afraid to throw a little bit of money at, and hopefully hit a bit of a home run there on opening day.
I started the show by welcoming in TV's Matt Bernier. Well, you can see Matt Bernier on TV this Saturday as part of NBC's coverage of the Haskell Win and You're In action for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Give us your overview of the race, Matt. I won't hold your feet to the fire for a pick. People can watch NBC for that. But give us your overview of the race and let us know where folks can find you.
Yeah, that's the tease. We're up from 5 to 6 on Saturday afternoon. So we've got the UN as our first race. And then we've got the big one here in the Haskell. I think, I'm curious your take, but this is a fascinating race in that you've only got 7 that are going to go. I think 5 of them you could argue are contenders, obvious contenders anyway. You need to decide what you think of Further Ado, right? Keeneland versus everywhere else. Although I will say it was encouraging to see him run as well as he did in the Matt Win, and so far that race has come back pretty solid. Our money man came right back and basically replicated the buyer in the subsequent outing, a mid-90s. So I think Further Ado, the good version of him, can certainly win this race. The Puma, I don't want to call the wild card. I feel like it's sort of an overused term. I'm guilty of it as well. But he is kind of the X factor, given that South Florida form, maybe it wasn't brilliant during the Triple Crown campaign, but it certainly wasn't bad. We know what we saw from a couple of these runners, most notably Commandment running second in the Belmont. Chief Wallaby ran a troubled 4th in the Kentucky Derby, so it held up quite well. And the Puma was sort of a trendy pick leading into the Derby before he was scratched. And then you get to the Preakness form. And what do you think of Iron Honor and or Napoleon Solo? You want to go on a tangent. Napoleon Solo has an opportunity to basically make this a 2-horse race for 3-year-old divisional honors with Golden Tempo, theoretically with all roads leading to the Travers at the end of August at Saratoga. It's just, you can go so many different directions. And then I don't want to leave out the maiden Ocelli, who selfishly, I hope he runs well, but doesn't quite get the job done, because I think he's a turf horse when all is said and done. I don't really want to see him turn back to a 1 turn on dirt. I'd like to see him at a middle distance on grass, because he's got a real legit turn of foot. He just doesn't seem to be able to sustain it. So I think that would translate better to the weeds. But big way of saying, I think for a 7-horse field, there's a lot you can sink your teeth into in this Saturday's Haskell.
I'll take a little bit of a shot with Further Ado. You mentioned about the form of the Matt Win. It's a race that visually I thought looked faster, for whatever that's worth, than the posted buyer came back in Timeform US. If you look at their number on this race, that seems to say it might have been a little bit faster too. I'll see if Further Ado can't take another step forward in the Haskell Win and You're In action for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Matt, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us today. We'll see if we can get another big price winner to go along with Sippin' Pretty from last week, and lots of other great thoughts as well. Always a pleasure sitting here talking with you for these ITM Horse Player Tour shows, and we'll check you out on TV this Saturday.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. And like you say, hopefully we keep the ball rolling, keep the bankroll expanding as we move on throughout the rest of the summer.
Folks, enjoy your opening day at Del Mar. Going to be great racing on Friday and all summer long. Make sure you go to horseplayers.com and get involved in the ITM Horse Players Tour. For Matt Bernier and our friends from the Breeders' Cup, I'm Peter Thomas for Natal. May you win all your photos.